Now that we have a basic understanding of project management, now let's focus a little bit more on the project schedule and talk about what it is. So the project schedule is a model of the project. Now, when you hear the word model, you probably think of like a model car, how it looks and feels kind of like the real car, or a model ship, how it looks like a real ship. How is the schedule a model of the project? I can't see the project. A model car, it looks and feels just like the real thing. I can touch both of them. I can't touch the project, so what am I modeling? Well, quite simply, you're going to model the work, the tasks. We're going to put those into our schedule. We're going to have durations on how long each task takes, which tasks feed other tasks, who's doing the work. So we're modeling the work. And in real life, the work is going to get done, in theory, just like we modeled it out in the schedule, just like we laid it out in the schedule. So if I look at a model car, it looks like the real car in detail. It's a lot less complex. Same thing with our schedule. If I look at the schedule, I look at the work, it's a lot less complex than what's really going to happen in real life. Everything in the schedule is a single line. It's a task. And in real life, these tasks can be pretty complicated, but the model is that scaled down version. The schedule is that scaled down version of the project. Like I said, we're modeling the work. And because we're modeling the work and showing those relationships, then it becomes a forecasting tool. I can look at the schedule and I can kind of see, when are we going to finish the project? When am I going to achieve certain key milestones? So it's a forward-looking tool. And like I said, I can forecast when certain things are going to be done. And that's the important thing about the schedule. We want to be able to forecast the future. We want to see when things are going to get done so that we can coordinate and communicate with our team. The schedule also, kind of like I alluded to with the model of the project, it identifies and sequences all of the project work. And because we're identifying and sequencing all the work and we can forecast things, the schedule becomes dynamic. It responds to changes. If tasks take longer than they were planned to, the schedule automatically, dynamically adjusts. It's not static. Static would be kind of like our Microsoft Excel type environment, where if one task gets delayed in Microsoft Excel, now I've got to look through every single task myself manually to adjust the start and finish dates. We don't want a static environment. We want a dynamic environment where the schedule auto adjusts based on the changes that occur in actual execution. Now, a well laid out project schedule allows a team to be proactive. And that's partially because it, first of all, identifies and sequences all the work so we see when certain things are going to be done. And because we're forecasting the future, now because we're able to forecast when certain things are needed and when they're going to be done, now the team can actually be proactive. We're not waiting for things to occur and then respond, waiting for issues to occur. We're being proactive to prevent issues from even occurring in the first place. And because we have all this information and the schedule becomes this very well laid out plan, it becomes a communications tool. I can use it in meetings. I can look 2-3 weeks in the future and communicate with my team and ask, hey, do we have the resources needed to accomplish these activities that are coming up 2 to 3 weeks in the future? And if we don't, now we can take corrective action before it becomes an issue. So a great communications tool. And as I alluded to in lesson 1, the schedule only comes about as the result of proper project planning. We actually have to do project management in order to develop a well laid out schedule. So now let's talk through a hypothetical schedule development process. Let's assume that we've got 2 teams. They both get assigned the same project. Let's take a look at Team 1. So Team 1 gets assigned the project, they come to a meeting room, and they open up Microsoft Project and they start to create the schedule. The engineer says, hey, this is what I'm doing. The logistician says, hey, this is what I've got going on, and the scheduler puts this schedule together. They leave the room, they start executing. Every 2 weeks or so, they come back to the room. The engineer says, hey, this is what I'm really doing. Hey, this is what I got going on next week. And they're building the schedule on the fly, and they execute the project. That is Project Team 1. They may even finish the project. It may even be on time. But through the life of this project, they are basically documenting what they're doing and then solving issues as they occur. Let's look at Project Team 2. Project Team 2 gets assigned exactly the same project. Now they come to a room. Now they don't open up Microsoft Project. First, they define the goals and objectives of the project. What does this project have to deliver? What are the constraints? Then they talk about who is impacted by this project, who has a role in this project. They bring those people together. They start identifying requirements. What does the project have to deliver? What do the products have to be able to do? They use that then to identify the products and the deliverables that the project has to deliver. Now, once they've got that information, now they come together, they open up Microsoft Project, and they identify the work that's required to develop the products, to develop the deliverables that are traceable back to the requirements that were identified by the stakeholders that are in sync with the project goals. So both teams got assigned the exact same project. Both teams had completely different styles of managing the project. But I would challenge that Project Team 2, when they start executing the project and they get to that finish, they are going to have a greater likelihood of success, a greater likelihood that the project deliverables meet the requirements, and ultimately the project is just going to flow a lot better. They're not going to have as many issues as Project Team 1. Unfortunately, the reality is that most teams that I've worked with operate in a Project Team 1 environment. We want to strive to be like Project Team 2. So that's what we're going to talk about in this module. How do we become like Project Team 2? So how do we become like Project Team 2? Well, we first have to identify and recognize that the schedule only comes about as the result of proper project planning. So we've got to have that foundation in project management. And those 5 processes, we absolutely must implement these 5 processes at a minimum. We've got to identify the goals and objectives. We've got to identify stakeholders. We've got to identify requirements. We've got to develop the work breakdown structure, and that will lead us to the project schedule. Only after we do these 5 things can we have an effective schedule. So in closing, our schedule, it's a model of the project. We're going to model out the work that's getting performed in real life, but it's going to be modeled in a Microsoft project file. And as we sequence the work, now it becomes forward-looking. I can forecast when am I going to be done. And now, because I've got all that information in front of me, now I've got a great communications tool, but ultimately that schedule has to be dynamic. It has to be responsive to changes that occur in real life. My plan, as soon as I start, we'd love to believe that the plan is what gets executed, but the reality is that we have things that take longer than expected. Sometimes things finish earlier than we thought they were going to be done. The schedule itself has to be responsive. It has to be able to accommodate those changes. And the schedule only comes about through proper project planning. And we've got to define the project before we can schedule it. So that completes this lesson on the basic overview of our project schedule.